All right. Hey, welcome everybody to the Momentum Leaders webinar series. I appreciate y'all coming in and joining us today, and there will be some more people joining us as we get going. Today, I have posted on there in our chat about the Momentum Leadership Conference we have coming up in March 16th and 17th. If you have not heard, please do so. We are stirring things up here in Birmingham, and you're going to love the amazing speakers that we are having and our breakout speakers, as well as our keynote speakers. We're going to have so much fun at this, and just can't wait to see everybody there. We are pumped. And leading into that with our webinar today, we have Wendy Rue Williams with us. She is a phenomenal leader, and she is a Mississippi native. And she is coming to us from Boston today. So welcome, Wendy.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I'm excited to see some familiar faces and names. Thank you, Darla, for all the work you've done with me over the last few weeks to get prepared. And thank you all for taking an hour out of your day. My style is really off the cuff, unscripted, and I would love as much discussion as possible. Interrupt me, raise your hand, keep your camera on, turn your camera off. It is absolutely your time. I just hope that you get something out of this hour, and I'm really excited to jump into this with you. So Darla, do you want me just to go ahead and kick it off?
Well, first I wanted to let everybody know, I just want to let you say hello. So Wendy, we have talked about this. I could go on for a good 15 minutes of all the things Wendy has done and accomplished. You can check her out on LinkedIn, as well as her website, but she has been leading women and leading people through Girls Leap. She is a board member. She is in the Chamber of Commerce with the Greater Boston, Massachusetts area. She has been a regional managing director with Health Management. She has worked with Outward Bound, and she is, and you would also know this from her pictures, she is a yoga sculpting certified instructor. So
yeah, I can find it.
she's done it all. And she has just got such a compassionate heart for women finding their place and finding where you're at. So today what we'll be doing, and she'll go into this so much more, of mapping your now. Mapping out where you are now and where you want to be and how to do it authentically for you. So this is going to be a fun day. I hope you've come prepared with some things in mind of what do you want to see yourself accomplish in your lifetime. And Wendy, I'm just going to leave it at that and let you just kick us off right there.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen so you will all hopefully see a big welcome. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Amazing. So welcome. Slide number 2. That was easy. So like Darla said, today was about mapping. So I've had the opportunity as of recently to step back and really kind of assess my professional and personal life for a variety of reasons. I've stepped away professionally. And with that, it's been a scary and vulnerable time. And what I had noticed throughout this entire progression of sort of figuring out what my next steps are going to be is the word vulnerability. And immediately when I say the word vulnerability, I feel butterflies in my stomach. Because I don't know about you all, but I wasn't necessarily raised to be vulnerable. You just put on that steel, you march forward, you do your job, you do it well. It's not really talk about our feelings per se, but you got to do it and you do it perfectly. And that's fine. And if that's how you were raised, we all have different lived experiences. But I want to sort of reclaim that word of vulnerability. So now that I had this opportunity to step back and take a pause, I wanted this time to mean something. But in order for me to figure out where I wanted to go, I really need to figure out where I've been. So I decided to take this opportunity to look back at my past and start to look at themes around how I felt about certain things, what types of decisions I made based on my fear or based on my vulnerability or based on my boldness. And then how can I take that, number one, and take that learning to lift other women up today? Because I'm here to tell you, my younger self would have really benefited from some of the things that I've learned. So number one, how can I mentor and support other women? And two, how can I then be less judgy about the decisions that I made and embrace the mistakes that I made and the decisions that I made to help me inform where I'm going to go? Now, one of the reasons I wanted to do this with you all is I had this opportunity to take this time and pause for a variety of reasons, but I'm almost 50 years old. Why did I wait till now to do this? So I'm inviting you all to not step away from your jobs or step away from your family or step away from what you have going on or what's on your plate. But why wait till a major life event to stop and reflect? So today I'm inviting you to take yourself on a journey to begin your map. Today you're not going to finish it, but I hope that you'll take this with you and have some homework. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with your mentors at work. Talk about it in your book clubs. Talk about it in your church. Start to talk about ways in which you have grown, and maybe you'll help other women along the way. So don't wait. And what I realized, and maybe by show of hands or maybe not at all, but how many of you all have been in a constant state of do since pretty much high school, right? We are in the do mode. We get our jobs, we do what we're supposed to do what is expected of us. We maybe have a family, maybe have multiple jobs, maybe have pets, maybe have a mortgage, but we are in a constant state of do, that action. But when are we ever in the state of being? And what I mean by that is, how can we sit, observe, look back, reflect, learn, and that will then inform our do. So today is stepping out of your do and stepping into your be. You guys ready to join me? Yeah? All right, sweet. All right, let's get started. So once upon a time, I was an Outward Bound instructor, and I'm not quite sure if you all know what Outward Bound is, and that's completely fine if you don't. But Outward Bound is an outdoor expeditionary learning school. And what does that mean? It means kids come and spend about a month in the woods learning survival skills, but really learning life skills. And when I worked for Outward Bound, I made the decision to work with an Outward Bound school that worked primarily with court-appointed youth. So youth that had been in situations where the decisions that they had ultimately made got them in trouble with law. And so in order for them to go home, they were mandated to complete these wilderness courses. This is in Florida. So imagine kids from Ocala, kids from Clearwater, kids from Miami, kids from Jacksonville, never met each other. They're aged 13 to 17, showing up with their armor. How in the world are we going to get to know these kids? So I did a map exercise. Each kid got a pen and paper. I said, listen, let's start a map wherever you want to be. And we're going to end it today. I'd be willing to bet we have a lot more in common than we have difference. So we all wrote our maps, and I would do my map. And ultimately, these kids would start to open up and share their story. So I thought, what a better way to share my story than to map it out. So if you see on your screen, this was my initial map. It's messy. It was scary. And I was like,
Wendy, you're unmuted. I feel like you was just giving us life and then you went unmuted.
No, it's true.
You missed it all. I'm done. I said so many great things.
That was me. I apologize. I was there was some background sound and I was trying to clear that out. So
You were talking about your map when you
talking about my map
and how scary it was.
So it's messy. Our lives are messy. And I had never, up until this day, since, more like Outward Bound a million years ago, had I really reflected on times in my life that I made decisions. And was it based on fear? Was it based on vulnerability? Or was it based on boldness? So a friend of mine actually interviewed me. We walked through this process. And to not overshare, but I might have shed a few tears along the way because I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in forever. And I felt really, really proud. So we took this really messy map, and my friend, who is incredibly, she's a graphic artist. I am not. Luckily for her, she helped put this, luckily for you, she helped me put this together. So I'm going to show you my map. Oopsie. There we go. Can everybody see this? Yes? So
Yes.
Great. And so before I launch into my map, I want to just call out the fact that we all come from different lived experiences. I sit here as a white cis woman, and I know I have a lot of privilege. So a lot of the decisions that I was able to make was based on that. I just want to name it. 2, I'm able to step away right now because I'm in a privileged situation where I can truly step back and take the time. So I want to own all of that before we jump right in, and know that I'm not showing you my map to mirror it, to use it as a competitive sort of, I have to one up somebody. This is truly your blueprint to better understand who you are. And maybe this is how you map it out, or maybe it's something else altogether. So I encourage you right now, think about a time when your sort of values were starting to be formed. When did you feel a shift? Maybe it was kind of in your belly. Maybe you started thinking certain things differently. Because I know as a product of the South in the 80s, there were some expectations that I had to meet, plain and simple. I wasn't allowed to ask a lot of questions. The time I remember that shift in me was in, and some of my friends from high school are going to laugh, they're on the call right now, was Mr. McShane's civics class my sophomore year in high school. Mr. McShane handed out a worksheet, and he asked a couple of questions. If you strongly disagree or agree. We all sat in class, we marked our answers. And if you look at my map here, you'll see civics class. All those little dots, they were my classmates. That purple dot, that was me. They were more around questions of like, why are things the way they are? These were questions around society. They were questions around politics. There were questions around how people dress. Do you agree with this? Do you not agree with this? And I was on the tail end, on the other end of where all of my friends and all my peers were. I started to ask questions. I went to my Nana, I went to my dad, I went to my preacher. Why am I thinking things differently? I don't understand. And my preacher was like, Brother Ray said, embrace that, Wendy, lean it, think about that. Start asking questions. But I was 15, 16 years old in Mississippi in the 80s. I didn't feel confident enough to start to ask those questions. So I didn't. I decided at that point, I wasn't ready to sort of push the envelope. But that was the first time when I started looking back at my life. When did I start having curiosity? When did I start forming my values? When did I start forming my belief? So right now I'm inviting you all to think about that time, and that's where you're going to start your map. From there, I went to college. I was lucky enough to go to college. My dad was the first person in his family to ever go to college. And he was like, I will send my kids to college. So I was very lucky in that situation. I went 7 hours away. I was so ready to try on this new way of thinking. I went to South Carolina, go Gamecocks. And I met this gentleman in my class. He looked so much different than I did. He dressed different than I did. The way that he asked questions in class was so bold. I was just so taken with this individual. He must have thought I was a stalker because I sat next to him every day in class and I was asking him so many questions. Why do you think the way that you think? I was so curious. That was the first time where I was able to start to really verbalize my curiosity, and I started making declarations and statements. So where, after your first point of reference, did you start to make changes in how you presented yourself? Perhaps as you made decisions. What are the themes between those first and second times? After college, I got a real job. I was an athletic trainer in Columbia, South Carolina. I worked with all the sports teams, great kids. I had 2 or 3 other jobs just to pay the bills, but that was my real job. My parents were so proud. And I was able to work with these incredible kids. It was a big inner city high school in Columbia. And although I was their athletic trainer, I was so curious about their lives and their mental health and their emotional health. I was just taken with them. Although, yes, I didn't want them to get hurt, but I was so curious about who they were as people. So this is where I made my first major decision. It about gave my dad a heart attack because he's like, you have a real job, Wendy, stick with it. And I said, I am going to go be an Outward Bound instructor and make very little money and basically live out of my car because I want to start to learn more about these kids. So I left a full-time job and I took a different job down in Florida, and I worked with them for almost 5 years of my life. It was the most pivotal time. It's a decision that I look back on that changed the trajectory of my life. So for your step number 3 or 4, where was that time that true shift happened? It doesn't have to be significant, earth-shattering. It might have been, I chose to speak up in a meeting and I had never done that before. And somebody recognized me. I used my voice. Where did you do that? Start to write down how you felt. Did you feel bold? Did you feel scared? Did you feel vulnerable? Did you reach out to your friends? Are there themes now that you're starting to see patterns in which you were able to start to identify, these are my strengths. This is how I started to form my values. From there, I went to be a Peace Corps Peace Corps volunteer. I moved to Paraguay. I really loved being uncomfortable, I guess you all can tell, because growing up in a small town in Mississippi that treated me lovely, I absolutely love where I grew up, but I had a lot of questions and I wanted to break out of the bubble and shell that I was put in. You know, had it been left up to my family, I would have married my high school sweetheart and I'd live down the road, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I felt this churning in my heart. I knew I wanted to do something different. So I went to Paraguay and I worked with families around hygiene and nutrition. And I decided that, okay, I fell in love. I had come back to be with someone who I met at Outward Bound. So I made the decision to come back early, worked again with Outward Bound. And I said, okay, I've gotten to know these kids. I could stay here forever. I got a promotion. We're solid. Cost of living is great. But my gut was telling me, you got to learn. You got to understand these kids in order to really help and understand systems and socioeconomics and social determinants. And certain doors are not open for certain people, Wendy, and you have to start to understand the why behind that. You lived in a very privileged upbringing. This is not how it is everywhere. So start to understand that your life is different. And the only way to do that is education. So yet another decision. Could have stayed in Florida where it's warm and there's a beach. I chose to go to school in Boston because I met this incredible woman who was the dean of the social work school. And I was having an interview with her and I said, I want to know these kids, but I want to understand why the situations are the situations. What systems are in place that prevent upward mobility? I don't understand. I'm so curious about the systems and the on-ramps I have for me, but these kids don't have on-ramps. How can I better understand the entire system? She said, Wendy, you need to come to school at Simmons because we focus on urban leadership. We understand that systems impact people's livelihood. It removes, equity. It removes access. So come and let's study together and we'll figure all this out. I've been up here ever since. I've worked in state politics. I've been a fee-for-service social worker. And then I made the decision that in order for a lot of reasons, I had babies and I needed to pay bills and I had a mortgage. I took a more corporate role and it was challenging. I had to make a decision. I had always said, I'm going to stay in nonprofit. I'm going to work in social justice. But what I found through all of those dots, that's exactly what I did. And it was so wonderful for me to be able to reflect and say, from civics class to college, to Outward Bound, to the Peace Corps, to social work school. And then, yeah, Wendy, you're not a sellout, but you had to start to make money for your family. You can bring social justice into a corporate role. So I'll be honest, there was a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of things that I didn't understand. There was a lot of disillusionment as it related to the red tape and the bureaucracy. I don't regret it, but as a place of where I am today, I decided to step back and sort of reassess, who am I as a person? And it had nothing to do with this map. But I think one of the reasons I was destined to step back was to do this map, because I've now been able to step back, and I hope, and I invite you all to take the same journey as I did, because the themes that I found, and they're highlighted at the top, I felt something. I asked a lot of questions. And when I felt ready, I made a statement, my action, my moves. And what are the themes among all the decisions that you've made? What are the values that you take with you? Embrace the mistakes that you made, because that's where the learning really takes place. Where were you vulnerable? And where were you in your journey that you wished you had your older self to say, hey, older Jamie, tell me what to do here. So I encourage you to think about, what lessons can you take and pay forward to the other women that are coming up behind you? What privileges do you bring to your map that you can identify and open new on-ramps for people who have been historically marginalized? Where are all those opportunities? We're all different. We all have different strengths. We all have different observations, and they're all real. And they all give us the lessons that we need to be in the be, to be much more intentional about our future do. So I've talked a lot, and I didn't go into every single detail of my map, because this is not the Wendy Williams show. There's already one of those on the television show. But I would invite any questions from you all, because we will be going into breakout rooms pretty soon, not to have you all complete your map. But for me, when I went through the process of writing my map, having someone ask me questions and then saying, I get it. I know you now, Wendy. That explains this. Or I had that exact same situation happen to me. What did you do about it? Wow, that's a great learning for me. So the takeaways today will be not only your physical map, it will also be taking this opportunity to create a community and have camaraderie around other women of shared experiences, different experiences, and acknowledgement that we're all different, but we all bring something super valuable, because in our next step, you're going to have the gift of reflection to take with you. So I would love to open it up to questions if you have any.
Hi, Wendy, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you talk about what are those questions that we need to ask ourselves? I tried to write them down, but my notes are all over the place. But if you can give us, I mean, I know it's like your story, but I think it's a great starting point, because I feel like I'm kind of there myself. So if you can kind of share what those questions are, would be great.
Sure. And I would welcome anyone else to chime in if something came to mind. Hi, Kim. I didn't see you pop on. So the way that I start to ask my questions, and I think back to civics class, Mr. McShane's class, is why do I feel uncomfortable? And the uncomfortable could be butterflies. This really makes me excited, or this really makes me scared, or this just does not sit right with me. Because that I believe truly in sort of gut intuition, we know when there's something not okay. So I'd say, one, explore why it's not okay, or why are you excited? So what is the meaning behind my feeling? Then two, start to ask questions to a trusted person. So I reached out to my preacher, I reached out to my Nana, I reach out to my girlfriends now, but start to have conversations with other trusted women. Oftentimes we feel, oh, I'm going to sound really ignorant if I ask this question. Vulnerability is a strength. Vulnerability is not a weakness. So being able to say, I don't know all the answers. Have you been through this before? Oftentimes, 9 times out of 10, someone's going to say, I've been there before. Let's talk about that. So I would say those two are certainly sort of the leading questions that I would start with. And then you also have to look at what your options are. And sometimes all the options stink, right? And so it's not always going to be a yes or no or a black or white. But stepping back and being able to make the most informed decisions for you at your time, based on your situation without judgment and without competition, that is probably the most challenging thing to do. Would anybody else add in some other questions that might be helpful as you approach like decisions or major life changes?
I think when I consider what's next, my default is always, well, how is this going to impact my family? How is this going to impact my kids, my husband, my life, my job? And I want to stop, especially because, Wendy, I'm like you, I'm 52. And, you know, at this point, my kids are grown and almost all out of the house, but there's a piece where I'm starting to reclaim who I am as an individual, not as a mom, educator, wife, like that. So I'm trying to find, you know, even I just recently switched jobs and they were asking, okay, well, tell us about what you do in your free time. And I'm like, I don't know. I take care of the house. Like, I'm trying to find like what makes me me and going back to that. So really finding this journey of going back to, you know, where we were as children, as middle school, high school, college people, as individuals. And then, you know, how it got muddled because we became part of a family unit, right? We became part of something bigger than ourselves and all the rest. And then trying to get back to that now that, you know, our individual lives or my individual life is now in front of me. So.
No, that's great, Jen. We do oftentimes put ourselves very last on the list, if at all, because it is truly about how does this impact the people around me, more reflective, and how does it affect us? Because if it affects us negatively, it's going to ultimately impact other people negatively as well. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
I think you have to understand your authentic self and be that. And just be. Something in one of your slides said being. And there's nothing wrong with that, taking time for yourself. Just like if they said that you were on an airplane, right? And there's trouble on the flight, you're supposed to put that oxygen mask on yourself before you tend to other people. And I believe that that's the way we should think about it. But I think just women in general, we are the nurturers. We are the foundations of the family. We are the stronger of the two genders. The guys know that, but they won't tell us that, but we know. And I think we have to own that and be strong in that. And there's no apologies that we need to make. We just have to figure out what our why is and do it.
Exactly. I think that is so powerful. It's really scary sometimes to use your voice, right? And someone put something in the chat around, how do I be vulnerable and use my voice in a corporate situation? Because what my decisions are going to affect everyone else, right? So men have been doing this for years. They've been using their voice and pounding their fist and great, they've gotten things done. There's absolutely no reason that we can't use our voice in an assertive, authentic way that's you feel comfortable with, but you are in your position for a reason. You have the skills. Someone saw that in you. You have a right to yourself and the other women sitting around the table to lean in and use your voice. And finding your authentic voice is really hard to do because we've already talked about the layers in which the expectations have been put on us. And some of them are wonderful and most of them are wonderful. And we can embrace all of them, but it's really hard to peel back that onion and think about where are we at our core. So I hope as you go through this journey and you start to find nuggets of yourself, to Sherelle's point, you'll be able to be in the be with your authentic self. So when you step back into the do, you feel it is much more intentional. You're using your voice in a way that feels very powerful and bold, and it can also be vulnerable at the same time. So a couple more questions, and then we're going to be putting you in small breakout rooms, and we will be giving you a couple of leading questions to kind of get the juices flowing, start to write your map, start to draw your map, because you will have homework to take this. And I will be sending my contact information at the end, because I'd love to connect with you all. I would love to keep the conversation going. And with that, if there's anything else anyone wants to say, I'll then kick it to Darla. Is there any? Oh, yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Sure.
Wendy, this is about charging forward. I can remember as a young adult, my mom told me, choose a career that you were passionate about, and you would never have to work in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about fear and removing self-doubt. Can you address that?
Let's just say that is a daily thing, right? I think it took me a long time to recognize what that fear was, right? Whether it be, you feel it in your body, there's a reason behind the fear. So I'd have to look at it. Am I making something up in my head that is causing the fear? Mm-hmm. Or is it a true fear? Most of the time, I'm creating situations in my head that is causing me, I'm pulling myself back. So in regard to passion, when I look back at my map, the thread of social justice and inequity is dotted throughout my map. Every single time I made a decision, it was the polar opposite of what a sort of societal traditional decision would be. And it wasn't necessarily for prestige or for money. It was that passion of like that curiosity for wanting to sort of step into a situation that's going to make me uncomfortable. That's the good kind of fear, right? That's the fear that's over here. It's like, I'm going to take it by the reins and I'm going to step into it. The other fear would have prevented me from taking those steps. We're all on different journeys. So I'm not saying just because I did it is necessarily a right time for you, but I would assess, where's the fear coming from?
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So Darla, I'm going to kick it over to you to do a quick breakout room. We're going to break out and we're going to come back. We're going to kind of share some themes and then we'll be wrapping up.
All right, I'm about to move you all into a room real quick. And some of you will have 2. Some of you will have 3. We've got a few people coming in and going out. And so I'm just trying to make sure we have at least 2 in each room. Let me just 1 second right here. Now, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and let me post this right here. Here are your questions. You may go ahead and post those, Wendy.
Sure.
Okay. Is that coming through? Send to everyone in meeting. There we go. Okay, so here are your questions when you're doing your interviews. And I have got just a couple more people to move to a different room right here. And there we go. There we go. All right. So I'm sending y'all all to your room. We're going to be there for about 10, 15 minutes. Is that right?
I think 10 minutes is good.
Okay. All right. Okay. Hey, Kristen, can you hear me now? don't see her on here.
All the way to the top.
Okay.
Who's that? Oh, she must have gone because she's not there anymore.
Okay, just me.
Yes. What's her name? Went to room 14.
Yeah, I was just seeing if that little popped back on. Yeah. Oh, well, looks like she's in room 14.
Yeah.
Do we move her to another one?
Probably wouldn't hurt to break out those two, but then you like move. You'd need to go in and tell them that's what you were doing.
Okay, so how do I go into it?
Join.
Going.
Okay.
And so I was asked to come and sort of share my story.
Okay.
And I did so by talking about sort of themes that sort of were throughout my journey. So I talked a little bit about
Hey, Elizabeth, how are you doing? You're on mute.
Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing?
Good. I was put in my group and then I got kicked out. I'm not sure why.
I'm not either. I'm going to read. Which room were you in? Who was it with?
I think it was 13.
All right. Give me just a second and I'm going to put you back in there.
Okay, great.
Well.
Okay. Oh man.
Hey, did you get back in there okay?
Yes.
Yes,
right,
she's back. She's
Yay.
back.
All right.
Listen, Darla, can you send us the questions? I can't pull them up.
I don't know how.
It's like when
they're
it's
in
like
the.
when we well
Yeah,
when we enter to the
Let me see. I don't know if I can.
with me and her.
Yes.
I can't access the main chat, if that makes sense.
I'm trying to. Oh, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to see how I know I can put it into the main chat. I don't know how to do it into the rooms.
Okay.
But I can ask you the questions. Would that help?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the first question was, identify your feelings and initial curiosities that once you chose your starting point on your map. So what were your feelings and your initial curiosities that once you started doing your map? Where did you start at? What made you curious about wanting to even question anything in your life? And then the second thing was to identify choice points on your journey that you had to make key decisions. And why were these key pathways? So in other words, decisions you had to make that maybe you would have chosen differently, but these are choices you had to make, whether it was for like family, whether it was for health or financials or whatever. And why were these key decisions of changing your life around? Would you have changed anything different? And what was the outcome from that? I know a lot of us, when we were going to college, where we went to college depended on how much money you had at the time. It was very different versus now. I would have gone to a different college, which would have moved me to a different city. I would have met different people. So that would have been a totally different outcome. So things like that, if y'all want to just kick that back and forth with each other. And the third thing was to notice themes on your map that did impact your decisions. your whole life up to where you are right now? Is there a reoccurring theme? For me, I always like to say it this way. Is there a common thread in all of your decisions and in your, your map of your life? And then the fourth question is what are you proud of and what can you pay forward with what you've done?
All right.
I'm gonna let y'all hop to that. All right, I'm gonna hop out. Let me know if you
Thanks.
Hello, is everybody back? Here they come.
Yes, we're back.
Did y'all enjoy yourselves? That's great.
Yes.
I love the conversations I was hearing in a couple of them. I love hearing that. And y'all getting to be a little bit vulnerable with each other and also share with each other the things that I love what you said, Wendy. We talk ourselves into a bubble thinking no one else feels this way. And I'm so isolated. I am the odd man out until you say something. And then you realize 2/3 of the room is feeling the same way. So thank you for reminding us of that. And I'm going to let you finish this up here, Wendy.
So this was so much fun. I have to selfishly say, I had so much fun sort of preparing for today. I was nervous, but more excited because what a great opportunity to just meet other women and find themes among us. I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Kristen, and she was sharing her story with me. And it was just the word that came to my mind was just resilience. And I said, she wasn't able to make it to the very first part of the meeting, but I was like, Kristen, you got to map it out, because the fact just that one part, it just shows like the major resilience you have. I'm so curious about the decisions you made after that and how that one event completely changed how you made decisions. And so I encourage you all to please continue to take a pause. It's so hard to step out of the do every single day, but to take a moment, just a moment, to be reflective, continue on your map journey, start to find themes, and just be forgiving of yourself for the mistakes and celebrate yourself for the learnings, because I promise you all have much more in common than we do different. And then all I ask is just pay it forward. Help another woman out. I would say help another woman out that looks very different than you, comes from a very different background than you, because the only way that we can learn and grow is from people who are very, very different. So it has been my absolute pleasure to spend an hour with you all. I'm going to throw up my contact information.
Thank you. And
feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram. I stink at social media, but I'm yoga and fried chicken, because those are my two favorite things in the whole wide world. And then that's my email. So connect with me. I'd love to hear more of your story. Any way I can be a resource to you, I'd love to do that. I love connecting with Southern women, because there's not a whole lot of us up here in the Northeast. And so yeah, with that, a big thank you to you all, and take care and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank
you all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for being here today. And
we need 2 more hours.